Hi, everyone. Hopefully a lot of people have had time to join. I think we'll have some more people trickling in as we go, but we might as well go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone to Ask Us Anything with some of our wonderful engineers and engineering leaders here at Coursera. We have an amazing panel here today to answer all of your burning questions. So thank you so much for joining us. We have people joining us from all over. It looks like predominantly Toronto, California, Seattle, Ottawa, Boston, New York, but lots of other places mixed in there as well. We have interns joining us, senior engineers, managers, and leadership. So big shout out to everyone. We are so happy to have you with us today. I'm Michaela. I'm on the talent team here at Coursera. I joined Coursera soon after we opened our Toronto office in 2019. And I've had the absolute pleasure of working with this amazing group to help grow our engineering team ever since. And boy, have we grown. I'm really excited to moderate today. So I'd love to get us started today if all of the panelists can go around and introduce yourself, tell us your role, your team, a little background, and one thing you've learned during the pandemic. For the guests, we want this to be as interactive as possible, so feel free to post what you've learned during the pandemic as well in the chat. I realized I introduced myself, but I didn't say something I've learned, so I would say the biggest thing I've learned is to slow down and to be present and to appreciate those around you and the journey, so to speak, more instead of just being go, go, go. I know, cheesy, but it's been a big takeaway for me. And a lot of people, I think. So without further ado, I will turn it to the lovely panelists. Let's have Andres kick us off with an introduction.
Thanks, Michaela. Hi, everyone. My name is Andres Rutnick. I'm one of the engineering managers for Coursera based out of our Toronto office. I lead one of our enterprise teams that focuses on providing Coursera as a platform to companies, to governments, and to higher educational institutions supplementing their curriculum. I have a lot of background in enterprise software for a lot of different verticals, a couple of years doing that in Toronto, and been at Coursera since about a year now. And one thing I've learned in pandemic kind of by necessity is how to make good coffee at home.
Amazing. That's such a handy skill to have. Please teach us your ways. Next up, we will have Victoria. Please give us a little intro.
Hi, everyone. My name is Victoria. I'm an engineering manager here at Coursera. I lead our a growth team for our newest business line, online degrees. That's my background. You can even see my background shows. So it is one of, if you didn't know, Coursera now offers fully credited online degrees. And then we also have something called the master tracks, which is a section of a degree if you are not fully committed to a degree. So my team is responsible for growing top of the funnel for that. It's a sub-team under growth. I've been at Coursera for a little bit over 4 years now. I started as a mobile engineer on the enterprise team, and then did mobile on enterprise, and the front end, back end on consumer, and then now I'm leading a degree growth team. So one thing that I learned during the pandemic, let me take off my background for a little bit. I got a piano, and I feel like by not knowing how to play the piano, I'm not properly Chinese. So I was gonna fix that during the pandemic. And then, so now I don't feel ashamed being a Chinese person who doesn't know how to play the piano.
That's amazing that you learned the piano, and we would definitely hear a little sneak peek of what you've learned at some point. Maybe you can play us out at the end. So next up, we will have Radhika.
Hi, I'm Radhika. I'm on infrastructure team at Coursera, and I've been at Coursera for a little over 3 years. And now I lead the developer experience workstream here. And we're responsible for pretty much how a developer writes code and gets their code out in production. So this pandemic has been a lot of self-realization for me, and also a reality check. So I'm just trying to be more mindful of my carbon footprint and trying to stay on my path towards sustainability. So this has been a lot of learning for me this year.
That's such a wonderful outcome. I'd like to say thank you on behalf of the planet and future generations for that. Okay, so next up we will have Saren.
Hi, my name is Saren Hassanli, and I'm a senior software engineer here at Coursera in the Toronto office. I joined Coursera last year around July, and I work on the enterprise learner facing side of the applications. And I think one thing that I've learned during the pandemic is just trying to find ways to, socialize with my friends virtually, and also try to stay more active in different ways now that the gyms are closed, looking into workouts that I can do at home. So yeah.
Amazing. I think that's super relatable and top of mind for everyone, and tips are welcomed for what you've learned there. So finally, we'll have James. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. I'm James Tyack, and I'm an engineering manager as well. I lead one of the growth teams, and I started at Coursera a year ago, back in November, and I'm based in San Jose, which is close to our office in Mountain View. A quick bit of background, I started my engineering career in London in 2005, and I moved over to the US in 2010. Spent a few years in wonderful Philadelphia, and then I moved over to the Bay Area about 5 years ago. So I've been here for 5 years in this area. A skill I've learned during the pandemic, well, I love learning on our platform on Coursera. And earlier this year, I did a course called Inspiring Leadership Through Emotional Intelligence. And it talks a lot about just how important emotional intelligence is to build strong relationships and teams. And I just say that, since we've been remote, I've found this, and on Zoom, I found this skill really useful. I've worked hard on it, not only at work, but also in my relationships with family and friends as well, who are also remote from me. So yeah, emotional intelligence is the skill.
Amazing. That's really heartwarming and inspiring. And I think everyone could gain from leadership like that. So that's absolutely wonderful. Okay, so now that we're all introduced, as you all know, we asked everyone who registered to submit a question for us, and we got so many good questions coming in. In the interest of time, we will be answering the most commonly asked questions that we did get. So hopefully we can answer what's on your mind. We will be focusing on answering questions related to engineering in particular. But for any leftover hiring related questions, because I know we got a ton of those coming in, or to hear about our current openings or anything like that, feel free to contact Fedra. We will drop her email in the chat so that you have it. Shout out to Fedra, by the way, she put this whole thing together, and big thanks to her for getting us all together here today. On top of that, we also will really encourage you all to post any additional questions that you do have throughout this for the panelists in the chat related to engineering. And if we have time, we will do a little Q&A session at the end and answer as many of those as physically possible. So please feel free to drop your questions there. So other than that, let's jump right into the questions. So first up, the first question is, what is the engineering culture like at Coursera? And I will pass this over to Saren to start us off.
Yeah, for sure, I can take that. So engineers at Coursera are involved in different areas of the product. And when we're working on new applications, we have the opportunity to collaborate with different teams from different offices. So in case you didn't know, we have offices in engineering offices in Toronto, Mountain View, and Sophia. And each team ranges of engineers with levels from junior all the way to staff, as well as interns. And engineers are very involved in, deciding which features are the most appropriate, requested by the business, as well as getting the feedback from the users. And I think one very important aspect to our culture is the Makeathon, which is a hackathon at Coursera, where engineers get the opportunity to either improve their current workflow or work on a brand new product that they think that could be beneficial to the company. So for example, Coursera for Business, or Enterprise as we know it, is based on a Makeathon project. So yeah, I think all of these make up Coursera's engineering culture.
Totally. I totally agree that Makeathon is such a special thing that Coursera allows everyone to take part in and facilitates for us. Would you like to add anything to that, Andres?
Yeah, thanks, Michaela. Yeah, to expand a little bit on what Saran said, I think a lot of what we call our culture here comes from our take on what ownership means. So it kind of starts at the team level here. Like a team is accountable for some product metrics. Like it could be conversion rate, could be site speed, could be NPS scores. So we're evaluated against those, and we're constantly looking at the impacts on those metrics that our changes to the product have. So we're always thinking about things from like a metric-driven mindset and how a team owns those. Then at the individual level, developers own the entire deployment process. They don't have a manual QA process or team to lean on. So they have to be really confident about the quality of code that's going out the door, because they have to put a lot of work up front into automated testing to make sure all of our cases are covered for our learners. So they have to be confident going out, and then post-release, the ownership process doesn't stop there. Any outages that happen, engineers are responsible for dealing with that, including writing postmortems, learning from that process, taking the learnings and making sure that we do the improvements to the product that help prevent those in the future. So we're always thinking about these ownership principles from the team and individual level. And I think that's what drives a lot of what we all would call our culture here.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you so much to both of you. Couldn't agree more, and that gets echoed back on the recruitment side for sure, is the major opportunity for ownership that we have at Coursera, and candidates as well as employees alike really enjoy that about working at Coursera for sure. So the next question that we have here is, how are you onboarding engineers remotely? I know this is definitely super top of mind for everyone. So James, will you take this one?
Yeah, thanks, Michaela. So, I think this is a great question. And I think especially now with everyone being remote in this new remote world, it's more important than ever to prepare for new folk who are joining us. And I think about a time when I was new. I remember when I was pretty junior in my career, I was at a company in London, and I remember the experience. No one was expecting me. There was no desk. There was no one to greet me. And it left me feeling lonely, isolated for some time. And I was on site in that situation. If you think about what it's like being new and being remote, this is 10 times harder. So, I think I think a lot about that. And for me, the key is a nurturing environment for new folk. Building trust and safety for new people so they feel welcome even before they arrive on day one, and they feel at ease with their new team members. And when we do this, people open up, they gain confidence, and they become more productive and make an impact much faster, which is what we all want to do. We all want to make that impact. So for me, it starts before day one. I like to make sure that I've reached out and spent some time with the new person on a call after the interview, just making sure that it's not just all going through the HR team. We make sure that there's a buddy assigned who also reaches out before day one. And I always remind people when they start that, I remember early in my career, someone telling me, the only silly questions are the ones that you don't ask. And I always say that because I think giving people permission to be bold, to ask questions, to speak up early is really important, because when new people join us, they often see things through a perspective that people who've been here for a while don't see. So I really like to just emphasize that people have that permission to ask questions and speak up. So the other thing is, I think that the existing team, the onus is on them to be the ones that welcome that new person, that reach out and make sure that no one feels uncomfortable reaching out to experienced people. So that culture is really important. And then, I'd sit down, talk about people's interests, goals, learning style, and also tailor an onboarding plan for that person. And we'll set up goals for 30, 60, and 90 days. But also in the first week, we want to make sure that people feel a sense of achievement and have easy, small tasks to do so they can learn the end-to-end development workflow. And I like to think about, new people adding to our culture. I think that, sometimes you'll hear culture fit. We're really looking for people who are coming from different diverse backgrounds and gonna make a difference and add to our culture here at Coursera. Of course, it's also really critical that people can ramp up on our best practice and our tech stack and how we work here. So we also have an onboarding program and a boot camp. This started off as a classroom style, but now we're actually hosting it on our own platform on Coursera, which is great because you get the full Coursera learning experience, and there's an option to work through the boot camp at your own pace as well and get help while you're doing it. So there's plenty of support when you're doing the boot camp to ask questions. We have a general track, which is about our engineering principles, as well as you'll learn about our products as well. We have a dedicated section, for example, for how the growth team works, how the growth products work. And then we also have a front-end track and a back-end track as well. So that provides a really great overview of our technology, our tooling, and our tech stack.
Amazing. Thank you so much, James. Yeah, I think that's something Coursera is really adamant about and does really well, is looking at people as culture adds rather than culture fits, and really making that distinction. And we don't want everyone to just, fit in. We want people to bring something novel and to bring diversity of thought, which really ensures that. I also like what you said about not having a one size fits all sort of mentality about onboarding. And overall, I know we've gotten really good feedback across the board about the onboarding experience. So good job to everyone there. We'll move on to the next question, which is, what is your favorite thing about working at Coursera? And we will start with Saren.
Yeah, for sure. So my favorite thing about working at Coursera is working on challenging problems with different teams. We also do a lot of pilot projects here. We like to experiment with new tools and technologies. And one of the examples that I can give was a pilot project that I worked with the infrastructure team in Mountain View. So basically the project was about using a brand new GraphQL server instead of our NapTime APIs. And in case you're wondering what NapTime is, it's a in-house REST API built by Coursera. So the goal of this project was to go over all the applications that I own and replace all our NapTime usages with the new GraphQL server. And I had the opportunity to give feedback to the infra team and suggestions on how to improve it. So I think, yeah, like my favorite thing is to basically solve new challenges or like work on like brand new technologies and tools and experiment with new things.
Amazing, thank you. Andres, is there anything that you'd want to add to that?
Yeah, when I thought about this, I think what I like most about working at Coursera is the kind of totally unexpected positive impacts that our work on the product ends up having. So like one example is this year, we had the enterprise product, which was kind of just a traditional B2B offering where we're mostly serving small and large businesses. And no doubt it's a great perk and option for people in those organizations to get access to Coursera. But in terms of the total number of learners in the world that are getting impacted by it, it's a little bit smaller than, say, our consumer offering. But what happened this year is a lot of people were displaced. We had university and college students displaced and not able to go to campus. And we had people who were affected by unemployment. So we used the enterprise platform to create a couple of free offerings. We had Coursera for Students and Coursera for Workforce Recovery, where we partnered with state unemployment agencies that wanted to provide Coursera to free for their clients who were looking to upskill and reskill, find a new career. So suddenly, we're seeing like an order of magnitude more usage in total on the enterprise platform, affecting so many more learners in the world. And it all started from something that was totally unexpected. And that's what I really enjoyed seeing.
It's amazing. I think we can all agree it's so amazing to work for a company where you're helping people and helping the world in such a critical time. It really is so rewarding and brings a lot of pride and purpose to everyone here. So definitely relatable there. The next question is, can you explain why and how you transitioned from individual contributor to manager? So I will pass this to Victoria to start us off.
Yeah, sure. So I've actually done the transition twice, one time before Coursera and one time at Coursera. So the time before Coursera, it was very typical of, I think, many engineer managers' story. I was at an organization that was very authoritative. They're not very bottom-up organizations. So one day the COO plus the CTO somehow just pointed their golden finger at me. It's like, hey, I think you have potential. Do you want to try becoming an engineer manager? And then at the time I was about 2 years out of college. And then I was like, sure, I think that sounds fun. And then little did I know that the team I got was a team that burned through 3 managers in the past 2 years before I could become a manager. And then there were a lot of problems with the team, with the setup of the organization and all of that. So I was a manager on that team for about a year. And then there were many things that didn't go right, obviously, because I quit. And then, but there were one thing that went right was that that was an opportunity where I learned how much I loved working with my teammates, and then all the cross-functional partners, and then what I felt like I was good at. And then honestly, when I decided to quit and then find another opportunities, and then my team members were the one that's on my mind, and I felt really bad telling them that, hey, you know, I'm leaving. And then so I really felt like I loved my team. And then so when I joined the Coursera, I made it very clear from day one for my hiring manager at the time that I've had this experience, but I was, when I joined Coursera, I was only about 3 years out of college. I felt like I still needed to hone my technical skills a little bit. So I'd like to start as an IC. But because of my experience from my previous company, I do see myself being a manager one day. And I think throughout my journey at Coursera, and even though my hiring manager at the time is not at Coursera anymore, but I felt extremely lucky that at Coursera, I've always had managers who heard my career aspirations and then helped me to get there. So I started at Coursera as an IC, but I was like, I think I made it pretty clear to everyone that I'd like to become a manager at some point. And then but at Coursera, I think one thing that we did well comparing to my previous experience was we have this apprenticeship program. So that is a program where your senior manager can sponsor a person to become an engineer manager. And then you go through a period of training. So that's where you and your sponsor clearly defines what's your responsibility as a kind of manager in training versus the actual manager. So, and then also your sponsor would work with you to identify gaps where they think that you need to improve before you could become a manager. So one specific thing for me was when I joined the Coursera, I was a mobile engineer, and then later on I did front end for React. And then my manager at the time was like, hey, we want managers at Coursera to be pretty well-rounded. So I think you should at least like be very technically competent and for our backend architecture too. So that's why I took on backend and later became a full stack engineer, and then kind of works on my manager skills versus like at the same time was my technical skills. And so we did the apprenticeship for about about 6 to 8 months, I want to say. And then at the very end, we kind of wrapped up the program and then talked about my accomplishments and then what I've learned. And then finally, my sponsor made a recommendation. And then I got a new team, the current team I'm leading for growth degrees. And then I became a manager. So that was about a year and a half ago. So overall, I think looking back at my own journey, I feel very lucky to have had all the support and then all the encouragement to do what I really wanted to do throughout the career. Despite my first opportunity not working out well, I'm extremely thankful for the people who introduced me to what a manager is at the time, and then kind of opened my eyes. Oh, this is what this job is about. And then later on at Coursera, I've had great managers who cared for me, who providing me feedback and all that. So as a manager myself, I do think this is the best way for me to pay that forward. Now I have a team of my own, and then also I'm able to kind of influence the other part of the org. I want to give the attention and care that I received throughout my time and to my team and the other people who need help, and then kind of work with them on their career. I think that's the my biggest aspiration for doing this. And then plus, I think as a client engineer, I have a lot of engineering expertise that translates well when working with the cross-functional stakeholders that my team works with. So I think that's another value add with me being a manager. Yeah, so that's pretty much my journey twice. And then I think I don't know going the future if I'm in the future I'm going to stay in the manager track or going back to IC. I think I personally see a lot of value in this back and forth, but we'll see.
Thank you. Yeah, that's amazing. And from what you described, sounds like a really supportive experience in terms of getting there here. So that's absolutely wonderful. So how about you, James? Tell us about your track. Everyone has an individual one and a unique one. Tell us about yours. You're muted.
Sorry, thank you. I love the way Victoria described that, and the idea of a structured, supportive apprenticeship, I think, is really, really, really great that we do here. But I'll tell you, how I got into it. I think this is quite a common story. It was kind of by accident. In my case, about 4 years ago, I was applying for a senior engineering role at a startup in San Francisco. And they I was going for an engineer, but they noticed a lot of tech leadership responsibilities on my resume and asked if I'd like to be a manager. So I was like, yeah, why not? I'll try it. And I must admit, I found it really hard at first. I didn't understand what the difference was between being a tech lead and being an engineering manager. And over time, through trial and error, I realized it's really important to spend less time diving into the code and the solutions. Most of my time supporting engineers by looking after their careers, helping them grow, and building trust and strong teams. So I get out of people's way and they feel empowered and they can do their best work. So I came to love the job after going through this realization and thought, how do I get really good at this? So I've spent a lot of time doing courses, been to conferences, listened to some of the best leaders out there, and I think that's helped me grow. I'm working on it. I think it's a lifelong journey being good at this. And I think the thing I've learned that is the most important, and Victoria touched on this as well, but being humble, open to feedback from my team is really important, because the only way we learn and grow is through receiving feedback and adapting. And it can be really hard as a manager to get that unless you build really strong trust with your team.
Amazing. Thank you for that. So the next question is something we get asked all the time, and we got asked a lot from all of you. So it is, what are the most important skills that you look for in engineers? So Victoria, will you take this one?
Sure. So I think we can look at this question through two different aspects. One is what are the important skills that we look for when we're trying to hire someone at Coursera. And then we can also look at, once you're an engineer at Coursera, how does your manager and then the organization think about keep growing your skills to continuously fit the need of your personal growth and then the organization's needs. So first of all, like when we are trying to hire new engineers, I think given the size of Coursera, we are right now about 800 people. Last time I checked, about a little bit shy of 200 engineers, I want to say. And then it is still a relatively small to mid-sized organization, but based on my chat with other people of similar size, I find we have a pretty rigorous interview rubric and then some very rigorous thinking in how we evaluate candidates. So most of our interview panels are either experience-based or like the interview panels that we have in an on-site interviews, either experience-based or skill-based. So some of the experience-based panels that we kind of figure out the candidates' past experience, the projects they were able to do, the influence they had on their organization, the influence they had on their teammates, and then we have various different signals that we try to get throughout those panels. They're mainly, hey, what have you done? And then we also have panels that are more absolute skill based. So your very typical coding questions, I would say that our coding questions are more on the realistic side of the things. They're less academia. And then we also have some panels that may be less common in some other companies. For example, we have a code review panel where at Coursera, we think it is very important and then increasingly more important now we're remote for people to be able to give effective code review comments to help along your teammates and all that. So we have a code review panel. We also have a system design panel where other than coding, like if you're a senior engineer, how do you think about designing a overall system, and then demonstrate your ability to also communicate with the interviewers about your design. So I think these panels are all set up to reflect very realistic skills that I think that will make you successful at Coursera. So that's pretty much most of the skills that we look for in interview. Once someone joins Coursera, I think we also have a pretty robust rubric for engineers to use when it comes to their own growth and then their performance conversations. And then those rubric kind of fall in like 4 big areas with impact, technical skills, ownership, and then teammate. So I think out of the 4, technical skills is probably the easiest to talk about as engineers. You need to be technically excellent with the code you write, the systems you design, and then the specs, the design docs, and everything that you put out. So that's definitely a big part. And then we also emphasize an engineer's impact. So Coursera is still a growth company. And then we want to spend our manpower at the place where we can make the most impact, whether it is, retiring tech debt or brainstorming with your product manager for effective experiments or whatever that will generate the most result. And then I think Andreas touched a little bit on ownership in the culture. We're very big on ownership. So ownership, you basically need to do whatever that will make your own team and your own feature successful, looking over the tests, quality, the monitoring, and then following up with the cross-functional stakeholders, whatever. Like this, we emphasize this is one thing that I like to tell my engineers is you basically take the direction of the boat, but I'm on the boat with you. So we do want our engineers to be able to take full control of some of the projects they own. And then the last aspect is around being an effective teammate. So part of it was also what James mentioned in the onboarding process is like we value collaboration. And then part of it is also how can you help your teammate to grow, and including onboarding new people, mentoring for a senior engineer to mentor junior engineers, and then or like help with some cross organizational initiatives, for example, helping out with hiring or various other initiatives kind of outside of just coding. So these are the four, I think these four aspects give a pretty good story of like all the important skills that we do value at Coursera as an engineer at Coursera.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much. I think that's a really, really good summary of what we look for. Would you like to add anything else to that, Radhika, in terms of what you think is important for us that we look for?
Sure. Thanks. To add to what Victoria just mentioned, so at Coursera in specific, we focus a lot on empowering developers. So engineers typically drive their projects all the way from gathering project requirements to rolling them out and also measuring impact. So be it a new grad or an intern who has just joined or a seasoned engineering manager, being open to learning and adapting and leadership, I think is pretty valuable here. And at Coursera, our team structure and tech stack also provides tremendous opportunities for us to learn and contribute in a meaningful way. Be it a product decision or selecting interview questions or a new feature development, an engineer at Coursera not only has opportunity to demonstrate their technical expertise, but they also have opportunities to learn and build their soft skills. So at Coursera, we have four engineering values that we pretty much use to make our decisions when we are in need to make decisions. So one is deep honesty. For example, this could be providing honest and constructive feedback to your teammates or doing effective code reviews. Number two is betterment. Finding opportunities to make something better, like a feature better, by adding a test or fixing a playbook. Number three is boldness. To not be afraid when we have to take risks, but take risks that are calculated. And number four is solidarity. At end of the day, we have one mission: to make learning a great experience for our learners. So we're all in it together for that. So just remembering that and staying true to what we believe in as a company's mission. So that's what I would think.
Yeah, definitely evidence of people who carry those same types of Coursera values is important to us too. So the next question, this is a fun one. What is the most challenging engineering problem you've solved or faced at Coursera? And I think we've got a lot of engineers here, so feel free to get into it. Saren, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the challenges that I worked at Coursera was moving off of Fabricator and using GitHub instead. So for those of you who don't know what Fabricator is, it's a code reviewing tool. So a team and I, we were looking into ways to migrate all of our check runs from Fabricator into GitHub. So what we did was we took a look at the list of items we needed to port over, such as running tests, linting, TypeScript checks, building our artifacts, and so on. And we found a way to move them by using GitHub Actions. And once that was done, we then contacted 18 other engineering teams to get their feedback, just to see how, wherever it was suitable for their needs. And so the challenge here was the back and forth interaction with these 18 other teams to make sure that what we were building was in line with what they needed. But once we had that all sorted out and our pull requests basically fit within everyone's needs, we were able to migrate off of Fabricator and then use the GitHub pull request system instead.
Very cool. Thanks, Saren. And Victoria, why don't you tell us about the most challenging thing you've encountered here yourself?
Yeah, so I think I want to bring a different flavor for this question. I think sometimes as engineers, it is easy for us to think the most challenging engineering problem is solely in the technical sense. But Like I said, my team right now works on one of the newest products for Coursera is online degrees. And then we partner up with our university partners to bring their degrees online. So a lot of the challenges that we face actually is married between technical challenges versus organizational or product challenges. For example, some of our universities don't think like a startup, and then they don't function like a startup, and they don't move fast like a startup. So sometimes the metrics that we use when we talk about consumer growth, and then when we talk about consumer growth, and then when we think what it means for a feature to be successful, may not convince our university partners. They might have different requirements or different interpretation on data that will affect that will come into play when how we design the system. We might need to make the system very customizable for different university partners' needs. We may need to make it very extensible in the sense that, like we may be able to convince one or two partners right now, and then maybe that will be the tipping point where we can roll out this feature. Now, a lot of times when we design these features, we don't know. It is not as part of the growth team, the way that we do degree growth is not very similar to how we do consumer growth. So as engineers, I tend, engineers on a team like this, I tend to encourage them to think about how we can design systems where we kind of accommodate everyone's needs, but also be prepared. I think in the growth team, we're very used to fast iterations and then make rapid changes and then doing experiments. But at the same time, we need to think about what if we have one or two or three partners who don't want to get on this new platform, and then we can't convince them. We still need to maintain the system. How can we build the system where it would allow us to iterate fast, but at the same time, not take like maintaining all those older versions wouldn't slow us down too much. So I think a lot of the technical challenges on my team kind of resides in that area, which is you find the balance of your typical growth team of wanting to experiment, wanting to release new versions, but versus somewhat like an enterprise software where your stakeholders have a lot, say your PM does not 100% represent your customers, and then you kind of need to find that tricky balance.
Amazing. Thanks, Victoria. Okay, so on to the next question. The question is, what is the tech stack? And why were these technologies chosen in the first place? So why don't we have James kick us off for this question?
Yeah, sure. So we use a lot of tools. It's quite a broad question, but I'll just focus on, I'll keep it simple, focus on the main ones. On the front end, we use React, JS, GraphQL, back end, Scala, Java, Java with Spring Boot. We also use Kafka a lot on our platform. And various data stores to back our platform as well. So Amazon Aurora, Redshift, S3. And our technology choices, why do we choose them? Well, we carefully evaluate them every year. So it's an ongoing process, really. We look at what's working for us, what isn't, along with trends in the developer community as well. And, try to avoid jumping on what's hot at the moment, and favor technology that's well adopted with a proven track record that we think will support our ability to onboard new engineers easily and provide a great developer experience and meet our needs so that we're as productive as possible. And I think the other thing that's important to mention to everyone here is that we're not looking for engineers who already know all of our stack. We're open to well-rounded folks from diverse backgrounds who are hungry and excited to learn. So we look for foundational skills, and obviously, for more senior engineers, what we look for is a bit different. We might look for more experience in our tooling, but that's a summary from me of the tech stack and why we choose things.
Yeah, thanks, James. To echo that back, we certainly, do hire tech agnostically. We don't require that people are coming from specific backgrounds, just that they're open. So Radhika, would you like to add anything to that as well? Oh, you're muted. Uh-oh. Okay. We'll move on just to keep the pace, and hopefully Radhika can get her mic working again in the meantime. So we're going to move on to the next question. The next question is, how do engineers impact the product direction? And we will start with James on this one again, back to you, James.
Oh, it's back to me, sorry. Okay, well, I mean, again, this is a great question. I really believe that new ideas should come from everyone, especially engineers. And after all, we're all learners at Coursera. We all use our platform, and that includes engineers. And I'll speak from my experience. I manage one of the growth teams. We have an exercise in the growth development cycle called ideation, and this is when we get everyone on the team together to brainstorm ideas for product experiments. So we'll have big ideas, and then we want people to break down smaller ideas based on things that we think will work, or we'll have a hypothesis behind and run those as experiments, do A/B testing on them. And since engineers have the best understanding of what's possible, it's really important that we're involved right at the beginning, at the planning stage. This helps to identify ideas that are low-hanging fruit, and it also gives early impact on the approach and the effort that it will take to run the experiments that we launch. So once we have a list of ideas, we weight them in terms of effort and impact that we think the ideas will have. We can then prioritize them, and then we can test the ones that we think are the highest priority. And I think the cool thing about this model is that you get to quickly see your ideas in production, how popular they are with our learners. We have lots of tools to measure the impact and the engagement of things that we've launched. And this means that we'll learn fast, and then we can keep iterating on tuning those ideas to get the best results and the best learner experience.
Amazing. Thank you, James. Saren, do you want to add anything to that as well?
Yeah, just to expand on what James said. So engineers at Coursera here are pretty much involved in every step of the product development, all the way from the design to actually releasing the product. So what happens is engineers first get together with designers, and they go through all their suggested mocks and look into like the pros and cons of each of the designs. And then once the designs are settled, the next step is for the engineer to work on a technical design doc where they outline all the new like APIs or components that need to be built versus what we already have that can be used. And then once that's done, the next step is for the engineers to actually implement those changes. And once that is complete, then the team gets together with all of both the product manager, the designers, and the other stakeholders, and we all test the application together to make sure that all the built features are met to spec. And once that is done, then we collect feedback from our users and then go through like the issues that they highlighted and suggest alternatives together in terms of what we could do to address their concerns. So engineers here are pretty much the key drivers in deciding where the product is headed.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Saren. Okay, so we're on to the final question of our pre-selected questions before we move on to Q&A, which is, how do you ensure that the Coursera platform is reliable and scales to meet the needs of learners around the world? So let's kick this to you, Andres, to start us off.
Yeah, thanks, Michaela. So this has been on our mind a lot this year. Obviously, our usage patterns of the platform have changed a lot, with a lot more people being at home and looking for productive things to do with their time. So we had to deal with some traffic surges for sure. I'm going to talk about more how we deal with this on the proactive rather than the reactive end. So one thing that we have is the infrastructure and QA engineering team. They've done a lot to give us a very robust CI and CD platform that allows us to run batteries of tests against any code that's going out front end or back end. And what the product teams have done in turn is invest a lot of time in unit testing, API integration testing, and Puppeteer end-to-end testing, finding the right balance of those in terms of the effort that each type takes. And we've even started to experiment this year with regression testing for performance and automated accessibility regression testing, which is really important when we think about making the platform reliable around the world, not just for North American learners. So we have it from that end. The other big part that we do from a proactive angle is we set up service level objectives for the team. So every team, for their microservices, for their front end applications that they own, they're held up to standards for availability, which is how long that application can be down and giving non-successful responses to our users or to other components in our distributed platform ecosystem. And if a team their component's not performing well enough, then that means that they're going to have to pause on their product work and address those leaks in availability, because that's the only way that the entire distributed system maintains its stability. So that's why when they see those leaks, we don't just go into a firefighting mode. We think of how can we fix this kind of in the long term, and look at how do we design something for scale and robustness. So that's kind of what we've been thinking about, especially this year as we've had to deal with a lot more traffic.
Totally, yeah. Needless to say, Coursera's users have absolutely skyrocketed during COVID. So scaling and scaling quickly is most certainly top of mind. Okay, thank you so much for all of those answers. Lovely panelists, you guys did great. I think we'll make it more of a free-for-all for the rest of it in terms of the Q&A. So I'll read out the questions, and then whoever wants to take it will take the question. Doesn't look like Radhika is on
I'm back.
audio. You're back, yes, amazing. Okay, hopefully you can take some of these next questions in that case.
Sure.
Okay, so the first question that I see that came in is, does Coursera have a separate site reliability engineering organization? Who would like to take this?
I can take that. At this point, we do not have an explicit site reliability team, but the site reliability operations do come under infrastructure's purview. Infrastructure's main goal is availability, so keeping site and lights on at all times. So we do see having a future with a SRE team, but at this point we have two work streams, 2510 and DevOps, who pretty much work on anything that relates to keeping site reliable.
Awesome, thank you, Radhika.
Sure.
Another question that came in I see here is, hi Andres, it's directed to you. What does your team do, and what technologies does it involve? Also, what are the biggest engineering challenges your team in particular faces?
Yeah, that's a couple things there. So since we're in the engineering enterprise team, we have to balance our efforts against, like I mentioned, this new segment of freemium type usage of the enterprise platform, and our paid large scale traditional enterprise deployments of the platform. Since it's all like a multi-tenant system that everyone's sharing, sometimes we have to make trade-offs for we have to look at which kinds of features end up being performance bottlenecks and trade-offs that we might have to do on the freemium side of things. But the main thing we look at is, how can we prioritize work that at the end of the day is going to make the biggest impact on the most number of learners and drive the platform forward. Hopefully
awesome.
That answers most of that.
Thanks, Andres. Another question we got here is, do you have a dev team or backend team using Golang?
I can take it if nobody else is taking it. So at this point, Scala and Java are primarily our choices of development, but we do have a Rhyme team in Bulgaria. So Coursera did acquire Rhyme sometime last year. They pretty much use Golang. So I do see a future where we would have services in Go that that will be developed on. Yeah.
Awesome. And follow up to that for Radhika, how often do you release new versions of the code on your site?
Sure. This was something which I was really happy with when I joined Coursera from my previous company, because in my previous company, we had release cycles and developers would try to get on a Monday's train. And, it used to be a point of all of us getting onto train. But here we have every developer can release their own code, and our backend and front end deployments are pretty separate. There is no dependency for one deployment to be affected by another. So we do have code deployments go through multiple times a day. And since we are on a microservice oriented architecture, every deployment is owned by that service owner. So multiple times a day by developers, no release trains.
Awesome. Thank you, Radhika. So I think we have time for one or two more questions really quickly. Let me see what we've got here. We've got, are there groups for feedback of user-facing products as well as internal tools?
I can take that one. I was a little bit confused about that question because I wasn't sure if it's from an aspect of user research or having someone internally at Coursera giving feedback to our product. So I can talk about from both. That's my interpretation of either. Maybe the question was meant for neither. So let me know. So from a user research perspective, we do have a separate user research team that they periodically reach out to our learners or send out service or having like user research sessions when we are ready to launch a new feature or kind of figure out a new product or things like that. I think if you're a Coursera learner, you might have gotten emails kind of related to that. So we do have dedicated teams to do that. And then as internally for Coursera, our engineers do participate in a fair number of brainstorming sessions to contribute to product ideas too. That I think that's especially true. I don't know about other functions, but in growth teams, because we do believe that our engineers are very close to the product they build day to day, and the engineers add value in these discussions when we talk about product engineering trade-off, what kind of experiments are easy or versus hard to run, where they see opportunities or things like that. So our engineers definitely very actively contribute to the product's direction from a roadmap perspective, and also to details like how certain things are implemented. I think we have a very healthy feedback loop from engineers to product to designers that everyone collaborate on building the best product.
Amazing. Thank you, Victoria. It looks like we're just about out of time, so we're going to wrap on up. Thank you so much again to all of our panelists, and thank you all for joining us today. We obviously hope you learned something new here and enjoyed yourselves. So stay safe and take care, and feel free to follow Coursera on LinkedIn for any and all updates. And yeah, take care. Thanks so much.